Okay, this video is about being able to create and solve problems using ratios and rates. And if you remember, the big difference between ratio and rates, they're similar in that they compare two numbers, but ratios compare two numbers using the same units of measure, and rates are comparing two things that are using different units of measure. And so that's kind of the uh, summary definition. We'll go over a few examples and maybe you can see what I'm talking about. So let's do ratios first. Let's say you interviewed some middle school, probably it would be girls, middle school girls, and out of 15 middle school girls, five, I know it's probably a low number, but five are all One Directioners, One Direction fans. So you have five girls out of 15 total that like One Direction. Well, we can write that as a ratio, 5 over 15. And that's a ratio to show the uh, girls that like One Direction compared to, compared to the total number of girls. And we want to usually simplify all these ratios that we do. So if we were to simplify that, the ratio is, 1 to 3. For every 3 girls, at least one, not at least, but for every 3 girls, one likes One Direction. And then if we were to compare then, another way to compare ratios, sometimes you're comparing a specific category with the total. In this case, 5 One Direction fans to 15 total girls. And sometimes you're comparing two things that are different or opposites. So we could also write a ratio to say there are, for every 5 girls that like One Direction, there are 10 that don't. So now we're not taking the 5 out of the total, but we're taking the 5 as a as opposed that like One Direction as opposed to those who don't. So the ratio of One Directioners to non One Directioners is 5 to 10, and that would be 1 to 2. We also sometimes write ratios like this, or you can write, in this case, it would be 1 to 2, or 1 to 2. That's another way to write ratios as well. But you got to be careful what the situation is if you're comparing to a total amount, or if you're comparing those who do something to those who don't, or cats to dogs, or male to female, or whatever the case may be. So those are some ratios. And then another one you want to be a little careful of is, let's say you're looking at a map, and the map, the legend says 1 centimeter on the map equals 100 meters in real life. And so this would be the scale of the map. We call it the scale. So in this case, we said again that ratios compare similar units and rates compare different units. Well, even though it kind of looks like we're comparing centimeters to meters, these are still both distances, and these are still both distances or length within the metric unit system. So if we were to take 1 centimeter and put this as a ratio in the form of a fraction over 100 meters, even though, again, it does look like they're different units, and they kind of are, they're in the same unit system. So we could very easily change this so they are both, in fact, the same exact unit. And we do that because we know that there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So if we multiplied 100 meters times 100, we would get 10,000 centimeters, because 100 meters is 10,000 centimeters. And then we know that the scale would be 1 centimeter equals 10,000 centimeters. So here, now that we have the same units again, this is in fact still a ratio problem. So let's talk about some that are rates. Close to home, oftentimes in the news, you might hear your parents, or when you go to the store, they talk about the yen rate. And so sometimes the yen rate is, let's say, 103 yen to the 1 US dollar. And so this is a rate because even though they are technically both money, yen and dollar are two different, completely different systems of units for measuring money, for currency. So this would be an example of a rate that you might see. Let's say that I go to the grocery store and shop off base. So I see that there are apples. The apples are 294 yen for 3 apples. Well, I can set this up as a ratio to see 294 yen for 3 apples. Okay, again, notice we're talking about a money currency here, and we're talking about a fruit. So these are not the same units. So this is going to be now a ratio. And if I was to divide 294 by 3, I think I would get 98 yen for 1 apple. So each apple works out to be 98 yen. And when we solve and have 1 as the denominator, or we find out how much each one cost, or whatever this is, to 1 unit on the bottom, that's then called the unit rate. The unit rate. You need to know that unit rate. So there's an example of finding rates, and I'll probably put one more link on the website for another example of unit rates. But I think that's enough for now to get you started. As always, please write your summary, and I hope you enjoyed this video.